This could be. What is up? This is the War Dog. Welcome to Comic Book Theater with my guest host, JR. What's going on, JR?
What's going on, War Dog?
You know me, just same old boring stuff. So today we got two awesome creators. They created a comic book called 47 Furious Tales. We have William Quinton. What's up, William?
How's it going, guys?
And we have Alexia Veldhausen.
Hi, what's going on?
All right. So, John, why don't you do your thing, bro?
Yeah, man. Let's get in on this. And I will tell you, Todd, I've got to give you kudos because you are much braver than I am. Alexia, I promised you at some point I'm going to butcher your last name, not on purpose.
No worries. I was just like, that's why I stopped for a second. I was like, impressed.
I mispronounced it for a year.
He's
She
good.
didn't correct me until one day. She's like, you're saying my name wrong for a year.
Oh, that's awesome. So a little bit of Parks and Rec going on there where instead of Jerry, it's Gary and Larry and all this other. Anyway, that's beside the point completely. So let's get into this 47 Furious Tales here. Let's get a lowdown from you, William. What's the inspiration behind 47 Furious Tales? I know we're on issue 2. We'll get to some of issue 1 as well, but let's talk about what's the inspiration here.
47 Furious Tales is a comic book retelling of the events of the 47 Samurai, 47 Ronin story from the late Edo period of feudal Japan. The vengeance that was enacted by the surviving samurai after Asano Naganori committed seppuku for an infraction of decorum at court. It was a pretty severe infraction, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he did commit seppuku to cleanse his honor. And even though the shogun had forbid vengeance, his samurai, his most trusted and loyal retainers, decided that they were going to enact vengeance of their own. And this is a retelling of that, and we're using anthropomorphic animals to stand in for these historic characters.
Right along. So kind of akin to the way they did it with Mouse or something like that, where it makes the story a little more palatable and easier to follow and easier to bring into a modern day audience. Then
that's kind of the idea, yeah.
Right on. Alexia, so I've seen some of your art from the first one that we were talking about in our pre-production meeting that we were having there. Let's talk about what are you using for inspiration with some of the settings and stuff like that? Are you going straight to that Japanese art for inspiration? Are you using some other places?
No, I'm going straight for that Japanese art. Like you said, I was really trying to channel that Japanese inking style you see in a lot of prints, in museums and such. I've always been a huge fan of that, very passionate about that stuff. And I've always wanted to kind of dabble in that more. So this was my chance to really do it. I really had to sit myself down and tell myself, just do loose brush strokes. Don't try to have everything so tight and perfect. It's a lot more fluid and feeling wise in a way, and it gives off a lot more energy that way as well. And I combine that with a lot of ink wash. So what I do is I dilute the ink with water and try to create different values, so different levels of gray to create a level of depth of view. I looked at a lot of Japanese art prints. I looked at some more contemporary stuff. I'm a big fan of Yoji Shinkawa, the concept artist of Metal Gear Solid. I got a lot of that kind of looser brush style from him. And next to that, I looked at, most of my favorite comic book guys, Matteo Scalera, Sean Murphy, and I look at, I cherry pick my artists in terms of what I like about what they do. For example, the way Greg Capullo does his storytelling, the way he picks out shots and extreme close-ups and such. I looked at how he does that. So whenever I had to tackle whatever in any page, I was like, let me see what so-and-so does. And then I would kind of just try to kind of take a little bit from this, take a little bit from that, and then kind of make it my own, give it my own spin, and then hopefully, something good came out of it.
Right on. I'll tell you right now, that's one thing that impresses me the most about artists in general is the flexibility that you guys have to adapt to different styles and different mediums. I mean, like I say, it's definitely not a talent that is that many people have there, and unfortunately, there are some people who are exercising and showing that they probably should have taken a little more care with their craft before getting into it. And I won't mention any names because I don't want to hurt Todd's feelings. He's best friends with one of them that endorsed his last Kickstarter and stuff. And
yeah, the guy that does some wonderful feats. I'll leave it at that.
He does great feet, and his abs go on for miles and pouches and stuff.
So
anyway, okay.
So Alexia, do you do digital art, or do you actually do pen to paper or pencil to paper type artwork?
I do a little bit of both. I almost consider it cheating in a way, honestly. What I do is I start off my line art, so just like what you would consider pencils, I do that digitally, just to kind of help me out a little bit whenever I got like, oh, I got to fix this, or I got to make sure that head's not too big or too small. It just makes your life so much easier being able to fix that in Photoshop or Clip Paint Studio. And then afterwards, I print it out, and then I go fully traditional, just brush and pen and water and a paper towel and a whole bunch of whiteout to fix all the mistakes.
You got to be able to do that. Now, I will say this too. It feels to me as though people discount digital artists. Does anybody have a good idea of why that is? Because I'll be honest with you, on my account, I don't understand why that is. It definitely takes a talent, and you still have to be able to put the lines the right way. It's not like you're literally sitting down and saying, hey, computer, my laptop, my tablet, whatever, draw this for me. You still have to have the talent to do it.
Yeah, we used to say that in class. It's like there is no magic button in Photoshop. They'll make it look good. You have to do it yourself. You have to put down the strokes yourself, whether it's on a tablet or it's Cintiq or whatever. You do need to have a firm understanding of the fundamentals of art to translate that even in digital platform. Digital just gives you a different set of options that you wouldn't be able to do in real life. You can't just easily tweak color palettes, or you can't easily fix mistakes, stuff like that. That's what the digital stuff, that's what makes it so great. But that doesn't mean that it's any less of a craft to do, because I follow a lot of digital painters or people that are just good at digital painting, and I'm stunned because they look like actual paintings with the kind of mastery that you could see in like the old Dutch masters and such.
I know the only drawback as a fan of art, and specifically comic book art myself, is the original art itself. The original lines, the roughs, those kind of things aren't ever going to be available on the secondary market because they're digital files. And again, that's from a collector and fan standpoint. Again, still fully appreciating what it is that the artists have to do. Now, William, we talked a bit in the pre-game or pre-show meeting too. You've been asked this before. I'm going to ask it again because I think it's important that our listeners find this out. Alexia does great work for what she's done for the book so far. If you had your choice of any artist ever, like pick one, a comic book or classic artist to do your books for you that way, who is it that you would choose to do it?
47 Furious Tales, Alexia Velhausen.
And
there isn't an artist I would rather be doing this book. There never has been.
I
I
know.
under,
Go ahead, Todd.
I understand that feeling because I have a Kickstarter as well called The Crew, and I've been working with this guy Jason Hare, and I mean, I can't imagine doing the next book without Jason, you know, because I love his style, I love what he's done, and I've seen what you've shown us some of what Alexia has done. It's mind blowing. I mean, mad props to you, Alexia. That
Thank you.
1-2 page spread looks. I mean, literally, my mind was blown when I seen it. I was like, "Holy crap! I got to pick this up." I mean, you guys might want to show that as your billboard. If you, I don't know if you can, but that I mean, if you can show that, I mean, that would attract, I think, people to your Kickstarter as much as anything else. Also, you said that there was that front page that people opened up to, and from they seen that front page, and from that point forward, they knew that they wanted to buy this book.
Yep. Very first page when you open issue 1 was literally when we were face to face with people at the Garden State Comic-Con. When they would open the book, they would stop. They would literally, you know, normally you see people and they're flipping through the book and they're flipping through the book. 47 Furious Tales, they pick it up and they're like, okay, it's heavy because we use really high quality stop. And they open it and they just stop. And that first page just grabbed a hold of everyone by the eyes, because you're looking at was basically an artistic rendering of the tomb of Asano Naganori, the gravestone of Asano Naganori, and it's just a very powerful image because it sets the tone that this is where we're getting to, and here's how we arrive there. So the series is set for 12 issues. It's very carefully paced to provide a lot of detail and to really get into the story. Issue 1 introduced some characters and give you a basic understanding of some of what they do, and that in issue 1. And issue 2 is going to bring in more details, and so you're going to kind of get to know a couple of other characters actually in this one. In particular, Kinemon comes to mind, who's our cover for issue 2. And then also you're going to see more interaction between Yoshio and Asano in particular. There's a lot that happens in a relatively short time just leading up to the trip going into Edo. And so we bring that in so that people have a good background as to what was really moving some of these events forward.
Can I ask you what? So it looks like you went with squirrels or chipmunks. So what made you decide to go with that choice of animal?
The truth of it is that I was, you know, going over this idea, and I happened to see a little GIF of 2 squirrels fighting with lightsabers, and I thought, you know, we can have, you know, Asano Naganori as one of the Japanese squirrels. We can have some of the other key figures as squirrels. And originally we were going to do all the samurai as squirrels, but Alexia pointed out that they'd be almost indistinguishable.
Yeah, I was just like, let's not do that.
Right.
But it's funny. It's funny if I look back at it now, because that's basically what they do in. Well, basically, they do a very similar thing in Squires, which is illustrated by Ashley Witter.
Yes.
She picked out a lot of different squirrels as well. But I guess I was just a little intimidated by the idea of having to draw up so many squirrels and try to figure out how to make them distinguishable, that I suggested, also just for visual interest, to add more variety to the mix, really.
And I think that actually works out really, really well, because we get some really interesting characters like Yahe and Yasube as foxes, and they have a lot of characteristics to them out of their history, out of their personal histories. They're vastly different than the other actors in here, but yet they were ferociously devoted to Asano. And then even some of our other characters, you'll see that we've got an interesting twist even on our other squirrel characters. So you'll see that they do look different. They reflect different colored attire, just like superheroes usually have different superhero outfits. We've got traditional dress, but different color patterns. And then also we have one of the cutest little samurai you're ever going to see. And he's going to be up to some real vicious stuff in issue 3. Just spoiler alert there.
Right on. Well, and that's good. Hey, I was going to ask you guys. Let's. I'm going to share some of issue number 1.
Sure.
Here, real quick, while we're talking to. I just don't want it to be something that takes everybody by surprise while we're having our conversation here.
Mm.
But so like you said, with other, I'm trying to think of how to say this. I may need for a change. I may need Todd to save me on this one. That he
actually, I mean,
sure.
Oh, go ahead, John. If you have
no, go ahead. I lost my train of thought. You know how it is, old age, right?
Yes. I don't. No, I don't actually. I'm still young.
Oh.
So this is a question for both of you guys. Like, so who are some of your inspirations? Alexia, art-wise, William, writing-wise, and I guess writing-wise, William. I mean, are you a comic book fan? Did you read a lot of comic books growing up?
Yeah.
So why don't you go first, and then Alexia, tell us some of your art.
So I started reading comics when I was 7. Or actually, no, before I was 7. I was probably 6. So 1976, 1977. And of course, I read, back then we read Superman and Batman, and Shazam, and all that. With this, I think that I really caught up in comics again in my early 20s, so like in the early 90s in particular. And I was really taken by a number of titles. I won't bore Alexia because she's gonna flinch because she's like, all your favorite stuff is so old. I'm like, yeah, I know. But anymore, my favorite stuff that I'm reading lately have been from indie comic creators. Brian Hawkins, who wrote a book, he's written several comics, but one of which that I really, really enjoy was Cornrows. I really hope he manages to get the second issue funded because the first was brilliant. Adam Watson of Darkslinger Comics and the Darkslinger Mafia podcast. He has Ghost Assassin is one of my favorite pieces of his work. He's got another one. They just finished a Kickstarter out that we should have coming out soon. There's a guy I follow on Twitter, Max West, who did Dominic and Claire, which is kind of a little fun little comic strip kind of book that it's just little short gags and it's just a lot of fun. Sam Johnson and Geek Girl, of course, Miskatonic University with Mike Shea. Boston Metaphysical, and I forget what the Miss Rawlings' first name is, but just fantastic creators out there telling some really amazing stories. And so Kickstarter over the last few years for me has actually kind of taken over from more mainstream titles. The last mainstream title I bought was Frozen for my daughter. And we sit there and read Frozen comics, so that was she's very little and she loves it. So
let me jump in because I wrote a comic too, not to like pat myself on the back.
I've never heard that before.
I know. I got to make sure I point that out, right? I got to make sure everybody knows. But like for me, it was Stephen King, I think, and Donnie Cates right now is like on fire, and everything that I read from him is great. So I mean, for me, it's those two guys. Of course, there's many other people that have inspired me throughout the years. Those would be the two that the cream that rises to the top. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, like Stephen King, some of the things that he said that he does, as far as like he sits down and he just starts writing, he doesn't plan it out. And so that's kind of the way that I do it. I know
that's actually in his book too.
On writing, right?
Yeah.
Yep. See, somebody read On Writing. Nice, brother. Nice.
Yeah.
No, I get
outside of comics, like if you look at the authors that I read pretty regularly, you're talking about Jim Butcher, you're talking about Charles Stross. And then some of my favorite authors are for RPG fiction. So Steve Kenson, and the absolutely mind-bogglingly talented Rusty Zimmerman, aka Russell Zimmerman, who did Shaken and oh my God, so much other stuff. He's just a remarkably prolific and talented man. And he's probably gonna smack me on the head if he finds out I said that again, because I think he's getting tired of hearing me say it. But yeah, these are really amazing authors. And then of course, you know, you've got those giants who stand so tall too, like Neil Gaiman. Gaiman, when you read something by Gaiman, it's like opening a door and walking into another world. And sometimes, you know, you really lose yourself in there to the point that you don't escape until you come to the end of the book. And that's one of the things I like about Gaiman is that your immersion is so immense and so immediate that it just really takes over.
Yeah, I'm watching Good Omens right now. I think that was written by Neil Gaiman.
Yep.
So far so good. But I mean, it's also got David Tennant. He's a master.
Yeah.
Best Doctor Who. I like Matt Smith. I like Matt Smith too. But
okay.
All right. So let's go to Alexia then. Alexia, so who are some of your art inspirations? Who are some of your? I mean, are there some writers that inspire you? And then, what do you see? Like, do you see yourself doing your own comic in the future? Because I mean, you know, obviously the drawing part. I mean, no offense, William, but I'm not an artist, and so the drawing is like impossible. But if you can draw, you could probably sit down and write a story. So, I mean, to sum it up, who are your inspirations, and then what do you see for yourself in the future aside from working with William?
I'm not sure I want to work with him much longer. No, just kidding. Well,
I'm one for big writing inspiration.
I was going to say, Todd says that about me weekly. He just doesn't say it on the show.
Well, I got into comics because of J. Scott Campbell's Danger Girl initially. Then I kind of jumped into Spawn after Greg Capullo, so after issue 100. That was when Angel Medina was doing it for a while, and then I kind of backtracked to Capullo's work. I'd already mentioned Sean Murphy, Matteo Scalera. They're definitely in my top 5 are most influential artists, and as to an extension, Jorge Safino, because Matteo and Sean were looking at him too. He's just a master of his craft. Right now, I'm an avid comic collector. I've been so since I was 15. I go to the shop every week to pick up my pull list, and big.
I love you.
Mostly the Rick Remender Image books have been just my all-time favorite books.
Like, Seven to Eternity is one of my favorites.
Seven to Eternity is amazing. I've talked to Sharon Pena. He's such a sweet, sweet man. So yeah, Black Science, Deadly Class with Craig is also really, really awesome. What's that book with Bengal that he's doing right now?
So you brought up Deadly Class.
John's dying to talk about Deadly Class.
Did you see the sci-fi show?
No, not yet. Not yet. I haven't seen it yet, but I really do want to see it.
Well, the thing is it's canceled. You might as well not bother at this point.
No, I know.
Even though I will say the first season was freaking amazing. The downside is nobody knew it was there. So yes,
I find it so hard to believe because they really promoted the heck out of that show.
The first 2 episodes they really did.
Yeah.
After the first 2 episodes, nothing. It was radio silence everywhere.
It's a shame because the concept is just great, and you can tell that the TV production team put so much effort into making it look real. It's kind of to the same level of Umbrella Academy. You know,
agreed. It was, in my opinion, if it had gotten the same treatment as Umbrella Academy, as far as a promotional standpoint, there's no question that people would be a lot less. They would not care nearly as much. Not that Umbrella Academy was bad. They would not care nearly as much about Umbrella Academy as they did Deadly Class. That's just personal opinion on that one.
It's fair.
I'm a little bitter that they canceled after the first season, though. So
yeah, well, TV shows are very fickle. That's something that we, as an audience, not always realize. You know, it's just such a such a chopping block TV world, especially now because there's so much competition going on. But anyway, let's not get into all that. So yeah, Rick Remender has been a huge, I think I did, and I've said this before, because what I do on my Instagram, other than the art, I also post my weekly pull list haul. So I just take a picture of all the comics that I grabbed that week, and I throw in a thought or a comment or two about the books that I'm reading and what I think about them. And I've repeatedly said that Rick Remender kind of made me realize that it is possible to make a living off of creator-owned titles, because he kind of took that jump himself, going from Marvel to exclusively Image and exclusively creator-owned titles. And, you know, he pretty much got the majority of Image in terms of flagship titles going on, with the exception of Saga, maybe. But everything else is just like, you know, any Rick Remender book in Image just sells right now, right? So it made me realize that, you know, maybe I can give it a try myself. And yeah, I do actually want to create my own comic. I have a concept in mind. It's been in the early stages of development for the past couple of years, but I have the idea, the story pretty much outlined. I just got to figure out the kinks and the details. Todd, what you were saying about writing, I personally don't feel that it's easier than drawing, because I'm an artist. So you ask me, hey, can you draw that? And I'm like, sure, no problem. And I sit down and do it. If you're asking me, can you write this? I feel like I have to reinvent the wheel every time. I'm just like, I think I can do this. How do I do this? In terms of, this is just my own personal approach on it. In terms of storytelling, like the structure of the story, I've been following a lot of videos on YouTube about they that analyze screenplays and stuff like that. So you kind of, and I've read books about it too, you kind of get the gist of how a story is broken up into acts, for example, and how you got to have your, you know, your dramatic points and all that stuff. So that I've got it pretty much figured out. My biggest obstacle is dialogue, writing good, incredible dialogue that fits the character. And that is something that I believe Simon Spurrier, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, he's really good at that. I really love the books that he's been doing with Boom, The Spire, and Coda, and now he's doing The Dreaming with Bilquis Evelyn, and she's just like so amazing. Every time I see her work, I just want to cry. She's incredibly skillful at her craft. But yeah, like you look at Simon's stuff, and the way that he writes dialogue is just, it's very witty, and I really enjoy that. So I do actually look a little bit more at writers as well as artists nowadays, because I'm trying to kind of figure out my own way of writing that, you know, hopefully eventually I'll get to that point where I can do it. But I also consider 47 Furious Tales, other than a passion project and a labor of love, also a very good experience for me, because I've never done like full-on comic books before. I've only ever done batches of pages, mostly for school assignments and such, in pitch packets. So that was definitely a new experience for me with book one. Suddenly I had to do 28 pages from start to finish, and I'm like, you know, how do you tackle a thing like that? You got to take it one bite at a time.
And creator-owned projects like that, you know, when you're crowdfunding it and you have your date projections, it's literally, we're funded and go. It is, you know, completed, best work possible, on pace, and it's very demanding. I mean, she had a lot of demands on her time for book one, particularly. And so when we lined out the projections for creating book two, we really made a lot of effort to make sure that we plotted out what we projected was a more realistic completion phase. Now, book two is a little shorter, so she's actually got a little more wiggle room in here, in case, you know, she gets a spring flu or something, you know. But it's really interesting for me, because this was my first project, my first comic, period, that I'd created. And so seeing these pages bring the story to life visually was just a phenomenal experience, because when you write it and you're conveying it, and then you crunch everything down so that you say, well, this is the image that we're going to have, this is the narrative text, the exposition, what have you. when you see it, it does really take those 1,000 words per image for each image and just blow it up in your mind. It's just hard to describe by any metric. It's an amazing experience.
Well, William, can I ask you? Because like we had Brian Silverbacks on last time, and
Yeah,
Brian gave us
cool.
gave us a really good education on what he does, right?
Mhm.
And you know, Alexia was talking about how do we write dialogue, and I think this is a good opportunity for I guess myself, because I write dialogue, and yourself to maybe just give our way of doing it. So let me start out. I talk to myself a lot, and I drive to work, and it's like 30 minutes, and so like I'll talk to myself, and then and fortunately, like we have phones now, so if people look into my car, they see me talking to myself. They might just think that I'm talking on the phone. I remember one time when I was a kid, I was riding my bike and some girl was talking to herself, and I was like, "Is she crazy?" Right? So I talk to myself, and that helps me with the dialogue. You know, how would you say you go about writing the dialogue?
Okay, so
That's a good question, Todd. I actually never bothered to ask him that.
For
yeah,
the
I think
comics,
it's fun to learn, even for myself. You know, you can never stop learning, right?
right? For the comic, what I did was I took it. I looked at some of the usual text you see about um, creating comics, right? Now, how you structure your dialogue and how you pace your story. And I knew I had 12 issues to work on this. So the first thing I did was I built an outline. And I'm getting to dialogue, so I'm going to try not to go too deep into the weeds.
No problem, brother.
And I knew that
Teach us.
I had to cover certain elements in there. And I had to have certain interactions between certain characters. And so I figured out where I was going to place those interactions in the overall story scheme. And then from there, I wanted to give potent, sharp, short dialogue that kind of conveyed or implied the relationship between the characters and what was going on. Particularly in issue 1 between Asano Naganori and Yoshio, who was his most trusted retainer, who ended up leading the 47 in their quest for vengeance after he died. And so I wanted to show a real reverence, a real respect, but also a closeness in the relationship that was within the boundaries of their society's propriety. And it was a little difficult because it almost had to hold the dialogue off at arm's length when you were structuring it to make sure that there wasn't anything that was too familiar. Now, when I write for RPGs, I typically tend to think about it like sitting at a table with people playing, and I draw those interactions and how people interact, and that's how I write dialogue when I'm writing for role-playing game materials.
Well, okay. Let me jump into my dialogue, because I said I talk to myself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that with the book that I wrote is I kind of became the character that I was writing about. The main character became me, and then in my story I have the other characters were kind of related to my friends, right? So the reactions that I was getting were reactions that I would expect from different friends and different people that I associate with, and it made the conversation a little bit easier. You know, like, so I mean, Alexia, I guess, like, if you were to do it that way, you'd think about, like, you're chilling with your friends, and you have every friend has a different personality, and you just kind of incorporate that personality into each one of your characters, especially if it's like really like original and it's something that you just came up with out of the blue, right? I mean, nobody knows what these characters are actually like. So I thought it was really easy to have these characters having personalities that related to my friends, you know, and it makes me think, like, does Spawn have Todd McFarlane's personality? You know, like, it's possible. Now I know, like, you know, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee created a whole bunch of different characters with different personalities, but that's one way that I went about doing it.
I will tell you on the Spawn thing that you're wondering about, Todd is actually on the record having said Spawn is a bigger, badder, most dark version of Todd himself that he could possibly imagine being. So you're right on the money there asking that or wondering about that.
I don't think I've ever been that bad.
Wrong, Todd.
I know.
It's all good. So real quick, I'm going to ask you, William. I know you said that you would not rather have any other artist working on 47 Tales with you.
Right.
How
Not for the
important?
interior art at all. She and primary cover, it's all Alexia Veldhausen.
Talk about how important it is as a writer to find an artist that gives the voice that you're looking for, gives the images that you see in your mind, and communicates it so perfectly. Because I'll tell you, like Todd has said, he's done his with Jason Hare, and I think that's a marriage made in heaven. The tone of the art complements the writing. I really believe that most of your most classic comic book story arcs, the art complements the writing in such a way it doesn't overshadow it, but it doesn't take away from it either, because it's got to be that perfect marriage. Talk about why that's so important.
Well, I think that, and not just for comics, really for any illustrated book, if you don't have a working relationship with your artist where you understand the scene, where you understand the narrative, then it's akin to having the wrong caliber bullets for your gun, right? You've got tools, you've got stuff that in a perfect situation will work fine, but it's just not going to get where you want. It's not going to have the results you want. I'm fortunate in that when I pitched this, Alexia was very excited by it, and that made it very easy for us to meet at the mind and for her to find out where we were going with it. Because one of the first things she got was the overall series outline, when we broke it down into what we were doing in each of the 12 issues. Because the reality of it is, when you're talking about especially someone's first comic project, you don't want someone going in there half-ass with like, oh, we're going to make a comic. What are we going to make it about? That's not where you need to be talking with your artists. You need to have your stuff together. You need to know where you're going. You need to start getting your outline. You need to start getting your narrative down. You need to start putting your script's first draft together, and it will change. So for everyone out there who's working on your draft of your comic and you don't like it, that's fine. You've already got the hardest part done. You've got the script. Work on your edits and you'll be wonderful. Because we went through...
Writing is rewriting.
Yeah. We went through, 4 iterations of issue 1 script? I think.
I'm sure, something like that.
I think it was 4. And
I got early onset dementia. I can't remember.
And we went through 3 for issue 2. I know that.
Actually, Neil Gaiman, I think he has like a master class or something, and what
he does.
Alexia said was exactly what he said: is writing is rewriting.
Yeah, it's a classic writer's quote because it's just true.
Yeah, because like I wrote my story, and then when I actually letter my story. I guess, do you letter it? Like, do one of you guys letter it?
I did. I lettered issue 1. We have our team's co-worker Brian Lee lettering issue 2, which is a load off my back. So I'm actually very grateful for that.
And he's really good too. So
yeah,
let's give credit.
The one benefit that I got from lettering myself was I could do the edits while I was lettering, and so that kind of came in handy. Like, maybe I got to fix this, or this guy should say this. And a lot of the times what I found is I could add a little bit more,
right,
by lettering myself. One thing, so this is like a script question, because like I'm good at writing dialogue and I have a pretty good imagination, and I wrote a pretty, solid story, basically following the hero's journey. Right. With you guys, one of the things that I'm always concerned about when I'm working with my artist is, am I giving him enough information? Am I telling him enough about the scene? I'm like, in one part I'll say we need a spaceship. And Jason, what I will give Jason some additional mad props on, the guy that illustrates my book, is he has got a tremendous imagination. So like, I don't even have to tell him like what the spaceship looks like. He just goes and draws it. So I'm just curious, like, how your guys' relationship is in terms of that.
Well,
I like to think that Sam gives me a lot of leeway in terms of the design of things and also in terms of the scripts, because what I tend to do after he gives me the final draft, I still tend to move things around in terms of panels. He'll be like, one page has 3 panels, and I'm like, that's definitely going to be 5. Or I just like move dialogues around from panel to panel, from different from the original page or the original script. And what I always do, because I kind of feel like I just have to, is like I sit him down and I like explain to him my reasoning why I changed these things. He's just
she does have a lot of leeway.
Yeah,
on
and
there's a lot of artistic freedom.
I'm just like, yes, but I think it would work better if we do it like this and that, and I come with all these arguments. He just goes, okay.
Well, I don't always just give in though. There are sometimes we're like, no, we gotta do this.
Yeah, that's true.
The cover art for issue 2, we have here's a good example of how things work out when you're working well together. We got the cover together for issue 2 and looked at it, and it occurred to me that there's a piece of it where there's a piece of cloth that's scorched on both ends that's flying behind Kinemon, like blowing away in the breeze. And it's significant for something that happens later in that particular issue. And so I was like, you know what we need? We need some blood stains on that. And she's like, you're right. And so a couple hours later, the cover was changed. And I showed that to 5 people I trust their judgment on. And all 5 of them were like, that's the cover for that issue. And so it's just a little bit of blood splatter on it made a hell of a lot of difference.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that we could consider ourselves lucky that we work so well together, that we can communicate so well together, that we can take each other's opinions and criticism and comments just with a professional attitude.
Mm-hmm.
If Sam comes up with an idea that I'm just like, not okay, like he can usually tell right away that I'm just like not crazy.
Well, we've been working together 2 years.
So then we try to come up with a compromise,
Yeah, we've been working together 2 years.
No, it's true. But John, coming back to your question, I wanted to just add a little something to it. I think it's important that it's not just about whether or not the artist can create the visuals that the writer might have in mind, or that they can interpret whatever the writer has written down. I think it's also partially got to do with whether or not the artist is really feeling that story and feeling just the whole vibe of whatever they're trying to create. Because basically an artist really flourishes best when you give him or her the tools or the means to do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. You're just basically, if you give an artist who just loves to draw mechs a mech story of like 2 giant mechs fighting each other, they're going to put it their all into those pages. And I feel the same way because I'm a huge fan of the samurai genre. I always loved the aesthetics of it and just everything about it. That's why I was so enthusiastic when Sam first originally came with the concept. I was just like, nobody's doing this but me. I have to do this. This is totally meant for me. So, if you have an artist drawing what they like to draw, it'll show on the pages versus an artist just doing a job because it's a script and you got the job and you're just doing the best you can. There's just some kind of a magical chemical that happens in your body as an artist that when you draw what you actually enjoy drawing, it just comes out better.
Dopamine.
Automatically, no matter how hard you try with the stuff that you just have to do as jobs. Or you can call it dopamine, yes, I guess so. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. The inspiration.
This is really important.
Yeah, the inspiration is really what's key, I believe, for writers and artists both, is keeping an eye on what it is that inspires you. One of the books that I've read about writing basically said that sometimes you'll start a project, you'll start writing whatever it is, whether it be a comic or a book, and it's a great germ of an idea, and then the execution, you start to realize that it's not such a good idea. At that point, it may be better to put it away for a time, work on something else completely, and then come back to it to decide, is this a project that's going to have legs, or is this a project that was better as an idea, and maybe I'm not the one to actually execute it myself.
Yeah.
And of course, with you guys, you know, you're talking about funding for Kickstarters and things like that. You can't really do that. But on the flip side, you let people like us see the issues that you already have, and that helps, at least in my opinion, it helps to fuel you and give you reason to continue down that road, because you're getting that immediate, yes, these people like this, these people want this, that kind of thing. And that's where I'm going to come back and ask you guys again, because I'm going to start with a statement here. I believe that Kickstarters are the wave of the future. I don't believe that Marvel, DC, or Image, any of the three, are actually going to, in the foreseeable future, come up with anything that has legs that's actually original. Because I'll be honest with you, almost none of us can name, they don't regularly come up with original new ideas that aren't at least derivatives of what they've already got going on. And so in that way, they're not geared for an original story or even a retelling of a classical story with a new spin on it. They're just not capable of that. How do you guys feel that that's going to work out long-term for you with Kickstarters? I mean, like you say, I think it's the cutting edge of what's coming down the pipes for all good stories and good comics. Do you think we're on the cutting edge here? Or do you think that possibly it's going to morph into something else?
I think that crowdfunding through Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and even to some extent through Patreon gives creators who larger companies might see as too risky to try and take a chance on the opportunity to bring out their stories and for people who will enjoy them to find them. And I think that's why you see some of these comic campaigns that have, you know, thousands of people who are supporting them come out and like, oh, this is kind of cool. And it can be a real surprise sometimes when you see what people are looking for. Whether it's a comic about a young gay hockey player, or a brand new Canadian superhero, or a telling of Morgan Le Fay, who just woke up after centuries of hibernation, or if it's a play on the Cthulhu mythos of Lovecraft, or even new tellings of stories set in the 70s based on vengeance tales from Vietnam veterans. And of course, you know, you've got some really remarkable ideas across every end of the spectrum for what people are wanting to convey about their stories, about, in some instances, their own lives. And it really lets those creators do their work, bring it out. And while some of these don't have the mass market appeal to sell, you know, 1,000 copies or 2,000 copies or what have you, some of these books can get out and they might find a few hundred people who just really love that and latch onto it. And in a lot of ways, that is probably even more important than the impact it is as the industry as a whole, because it makes such a big difference to the individuals. It makes a difference to the people who get to read those stories. It makes a difference to the people who get to tell those stories. So you have, for example, there was a comic that was funded on Kickstarter that was made to provide comics for children who were in terminally ill hospitals that care for terminally ill children. And it pictured them as superheroes. And it did remarkably well. It benefited them. They got copies and coloring books and stuff. And it was a really, really amazing idea. And so with crowdfunding, that not only brought that creators inspiration to the world, but it made an incredible difference in the lives of some tragically very ill children as well. And you never know what the impact's quite going to be. There's been some really intense things that some of the artists I commission for projects tell me, because the role-playing side of what I do, we commission a lot of different artists. I've had one artist who told me that, the money he made off one particular project, it paid for his kids' food at school for a semester. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. One particular artist told me that her work on our omnibus is what bought her medication for 2 months, and she had been out for a week by the time we got the money from Kickstarter, so she got it that night. Little things like that make a huge impact in people's lives, and you get to entertain people who are enjoying the product. And yeah, 2017 figures are out, and according to Kickstarter and several other sources who have compared this, it appears that 2017 Kickstarter had more campaign contributions for comics than Marvel had reported as gross sales. And I say appeared because there's a nuance in that figure where it looks at total contributions but doesn't take into effect things like campaigns that weren't successfully funded, or campaigns that haven't yet delivered on their product. But still, the fact that people are willing to go out and pledge their support to get these stories, I think is a very powerful statement that people, if nothing else, are looking for new stories in the comic book medium, and they want something that's really going to touch them, and they're willing to support the creators to make it happen.
I think part of the problem within, and I'm just speaking as a European, is that in the American comic book industry, the genres are very few and far between. It's just superheroes and maybe, a couple of other things. Whereas in Europe and even Japan, you have comics about anything and everything that you can possibly think of. So Kickstarter has kind of started filling in that gap of different genres and different stories, also for different marginalized groups and what have you. There's obviously a lot more demand for representation of all types of peoples, whether it be sexual orientation or religion or, skin tone or whatever. That just was never that prominently present in mainstream comics. I'm not going to say it wasn't present at all. That's definitely not true. But there's just been more of a demand for just more variety in our stories, and I think that's just only fair. So the other cool aspect about the world as we live in right now is that now you can kind of cut out that middleman and just go, I'm the artist creating products for you to consume if you like it, and you're my patron that can support me in whatever it is you want me to do. Whereas before you were just so dependent on the good graces of Marvel and DC and even Image and other publishing companies. Now you basically have the tools to do it yourself and to reach out to your audience yourself, and they could directly or indirectly talk to you. They don't have to go to conventions anymore to reach out to their favorite creators. In that sense, we're living in an amazing world right now, honestly.
Right. Absolutely. And really, to me, that just speaks volumes on where, like you say, to me, it's proof positive that we're definitely headed in the right direction of the direct from producer to the consumer type model, and getting look, this is the other thing that I know some people have issues with, but where Kickstarter and this direct model gets completely out of the way is there is a certain segment of our listeners, as well as just people in general, that believe diversity is kind of shoehorned in or done very ham-fistedly with like Marvel and DC. They feel like it's forced. The great thing about going with something like Kickstarter is, like you say, the diversity is there. You choose what the diversity that you're looking for. If you're looking for a run-of-the-mill, like Todd has used the term Mary Sue, if you're looking for a Mary Sue type character who's just perfect, everything happens luckily in their favor, and that's the kind of story you want to read, it's there. I'm certain of it. William and I talked before we had you guys on too. I'm also certain there are literally thousands of great comic books and great stories out there that people just need to find. They need to have a different avenue to find them so that they can be funded. And they're amazing stories with amazing art. It's just that some people are so stuck on, and look, I'm a Spider-Man guy. That's it's funny too, Alexia, that you said in the pre-show meeting that you went to Kubert School. You is that something you attended? Was it correspondence? I'm not sure how that works out.
Oh no, I was a full-time student. I just basically quote unquote immigrated from the Netherlands to the US, and I went to this school in Dover, New Jersey, because it's the Kubert School.
Right.
And granted, it was the best decision I've made in my life so far.
Right on.
But yeah, no, I was just there for the full-time program all 3 years.
It's funny because, and the reason I say it's funny is because Adam Kubert is the reason why I collect comic books right now. He did a cover for Spirits of Venom, and I bring this up every time that I have the opportunity. Venom is hanging upside down off of the top of a sewer ceiling with Ghost Rider's chain in his fist and the skull of Ghost Rider at the end of the chain. Well, it's upside down and the fire is coming up his arm. There's slobber coming off the top of his head. It's amazing. A 13, 14-year-old me looked at that and said, I don't know who that is, but I've got to find out right now.
It's funny. I was fortunate that I had Adam for 2 years. I had him in first year for narrative class, and I had him in third year for narrative class. And one of his general mottos would always be, it doesn't always have to make sense as long as it looks cool.
hey, I guaranteed for 13 or 14-year-old me, that was 100% accurate. And honestly, probably why, like I say, I personally give Rob Liefeld tons of grief on this show. It's not uncommon for his name to come up and me to be like, oh, I hate that guy. I don't really hate him, but he's not my favorite human being in the world, and his art certainly is not my favorite. But I gotta admit, in the 90s, it looked cool, and it gives the nostalgic vibe now to guys my age. So,
yeah.
I mean,
anyway,
that
he definitely had the same kind of mentality. Is like, let's just make it look as cool as possible. I think they were probably trying to live out their own teenage dreams as well. We're like, we're gonna give everybody chainsaws and like pockets everywhere and 500 guns on their backs because it looks cool. That I'm sure that a lot of that has to do with it. But whatever makes you happy, I said.
That's how we ended up with the character Solo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Teleporting gun bunny. Gotta love Solo.
All right. Well, I think we're coming up onto the hour, so, and I think we should probably do some final thoughts here. So let's start with William first. Why don't you give us some final thoughts? Tell us a little bit like when your Kickstarter's kicking off, how people can find you, and then we'll roll from there.
Cool. So the Kickstarter is going live on Wednesday, February 5th. Also, new comic book day, so love that coincidence. When that goes live on Kickstarter, folks will be able to download for free a digital copy of issue 1. So they can get a feel for what we're doing, decide if they like it, and hopefully support the campaign. We've got some really cool tiers on there. And Alexia did is doing all the interior art. She did the primary cover. This is going to be our very first time we're going to have a variant cover offered, which we reached out to Alexia's friend, really great guy, Paul Walcott, who knocked it out of the park. And so we have just that little variation there. And it was basically because we had a lot of the backers who were requesting an opportunity to have multiple covers. So we complied because, you know, when you are doing Kickstarter stuff, that's one thing you need to do. Final thoughts on this too. Remember, when you're supporting Kickstarter, you should expect the best product that your creator can bring to you. And so I'm very, very proud to have completed 10 successful Kickstarter campaigns since 2017, all of which have fulfilled. We got everything into the hands of people at the quality we promised or better. And I'm really happy about that. It's really great to know that the people who supported us got the best work that we could give to them. And so we're going to keep doing that until I'm dead. And we're going to give them the very, very best we can do every single time.
Well, that means a full 12 issues at least. That's good.
It's going to be full 12. It is going to be full 12 issues. Yeah. We didn't fund the first time.
Live through all. You have to live through all 12 of the issues. Is my
well, Alexia has the outline too. So.
Oh, okay. Well.
And I actually have a dear friend of mine who's set to take over the company in case I die.
Let's not make that the plan, though.
Wasn't it Todd that said, "Oh, actually, you could basically just write it for you"?
Maybe no, I wasn't saying that. just don't George R. Martin or us, you know. I mean,
right.
I'm gonna write all these books, and I'm not gonna tell you what the ending is.
No, I'll tell you. The thing is, the only thing that really slows us down is how quickly we can get our funding, because we have a big goal for this. Because here's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of the campaigns that you see have very small goals because their artists aren't being paid very well, if at all. Some folks are doing their own comic and they're not paying themselves. I don't believe in that. I don't ask anyone to work for free. So our artists are paid, and they're paid a very fair rate. I'd like to pay them more when we get more of an audience, but that's just because I think that people who have such talent should, you know, be at least paid commensurate with your plumber. You know, I mean, it's a skilled profession. I won't get on my soapbox too much. We'll be here for days, but that's going to be something that isn't like, oh, well, we're going to draw an hour here, we're going to draw an hour there. No, I mean, she's putting in long work days.
To give you a good visual of it, I'm going to have to basically temporarily quit my day job to work on this full time, because it really is a full-time job. Just every page is about 12 plus hours of work from start to finish. So in order to get that done at a timely manner, also so that we can have it ready for Garden State Comic Fest at the end of June this year, where I'm just going to have to take off, which means that I'm going to have to just have my basic expenses covered. So I'm not, you know, basically homeless and starving while I'm doing this.
Right. We don't go into that whole starving artist stuff around here now. Sonoma Publishing is my brand, and we pay our artists. We pay them on time. We pay them what we told them we we're going to pay them, and we pay them in actual money. You know, so can't buy hot dogs with exposure. So, you know, when people say, "Oh, wow," you know, well, what do we do to get this? I mean, well, you know, you do the best job you can, and here's the money, and let's get this done. You know, how they can find the campaign, we have a link that I'll go ahead and tag on here for you. We have a preview page that's ready for launch. So you can select notify me on launch, and it'll actually shoot you a message from Kickstarter when we go live on Wednesday the 5th. And come on out, and we hope that everyone will come out on Wednesday, so we have a really big launch day and just show the world how much support we have behind this. Come out and get your free copy of issue 1 off the page directly. It's very easily marked, has a nice little picture of the first issue cover right there. So you just click on that and download it straight off drive-through-rpg.com, and it'll be yours in your library there with easy access anytime you want to read it. So,
Alexia, you want to give us some final thoughts as well?
Yeah. Earlier we were talking about digital versus original art, and as I explained, I inked everything traditionally, so I have all of the practically all of the pages, and they're going to be up for sale starting Wednesday, February 5th, on launch day at my day job. That's a Drip Coffee in Madison, New Jersey. That's where I'm at in North Jersey. So if you are from the area, in the area, anywhere near it, Wednesday, February 5th, we're going to have an art opening of the exhibit of all the original pages of issue 1 at Drip Coffee in Madison, New Jersey on 34 Main Street. And it's going to be like a community thing. I've basically just drummed up all my friends and asked a lot of the patrons of Drip if they'd be interested to attend. A lot of these people actually were also backers of the original comics, so that was really nice of them.
It's a big party, actually, is what she's
like I
said.
Like I said,
big party.
Earlier, serving people coffee for 7 years does have its perks eventually. Yeah. So yeah, if you're in the area, come on by. It starts at 7 p.m. Like I said, Drip Coffee in Madison. You can just look it up. And all the pages will be up for sale, and all of the earnings of that will go directly into the Kickstarter for issue 2.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily keeping that money. It's definitely going into issue 2. So I'm kind of like reinvesting it in a way. So that's the one thing that I wanted to say. The other thing is, shamelessly self-promoting, check out my Instagram. My handle is Lexa Musa, so that's Lex A and then Moose A. That's where I post all the updates, all of my art updates. When we fund, there's going to be little snippets and behind the scenes footage of the pages that I'll be working on, and I'll also post my weekly comic haul, as I like to call it, of all the books that I'm reading, because for some reason people are really interested in that. So there you go.
Right on. Well, I will tell you that is I'm still learning the Instagram game myself personally. It's one of those deals you just have to, like with Todd and I, the Collector's Corner has been huge for us as far as getting the exposure to people, sharing these videos live on Facebook, those kind of things. They're all different ways for us to help support the actual creators, as opposed to, as opposed to just forking over money for, let's be honest, some people, like Alexia, you were saying your haul video or your haul pictures for New Comic Book Day. I know for a fact there are people who continue to buy comic books in the hopes that eventually the comics will get better, or force of habit, or they're completionists, those kind of things. And to me personally, I would much rather see those folks don't continue to give Marvel and DC and Image your money based on your hope that the next issue will be better. Find a Kickstarter and help it get funded.
Amen.
And you don't have to do that every New Comic Book Wednesday. Do it once a month or once a quarter. Literally every little bit helps. Yep. Even if you're just saying, you know what, this sounds like a very cool project. They've got a tier for a digital download only. I'm doing that with this one. It all helps towards the end goal, which is getting them completely funded and letting people share with the world what their projects are and what their inspirations are. That would be my final thought is go find a Kickstarter and support it. Don't just throw good money after bad. Now, if you're satisfied with what Marvel and DC and Image are putting out on your titles, stick with it, man. Be loyal. But like I say, because I literally see it every Wednesday. Somebody is posting a video on the Collector's Corner saying, I got this book. It sucked for 10 issues. I thought I'd go ahead and give it one more issue. And you're like,
Oh, no.
stop. Life is too short.
We're kind of
Listen,
spoiled. We haven't had anyone. No one's posting any hate videos of issue 1. I don't know if it's just we're lucky or just spoiled.
Listen, I have a little rule of thumb with that as a collector myself, because the story arc usually consists out of 5 to 6 issues. So if it's still not good after issue 3, drop it. It's just that simple. Because it's not going to get, if you're at the midpoint of the story arc and you're still just like, then it's just not going to get any better, really. That's my parting wisdom on that.
I will just interject this too. There are some really fantastic things that are coming out on crowdfunding from some amazing people. Adam Watson with Dark Slinger Mafia, Dean Cush, who has put out some amazing comics, Brian Hawkins, Raj Mahan, a buddy of mine down in Texas. He's got his first comic coming out here in a couple of months. Brian Polito, I just mispronounced his name. Anyway, he's got another Lady Death project coming that he actually postponed because he had a slight delay on fulfillment of his last one. And these kind of people who are dedicated to bringing their product to their backers, honestly, I think they deserve all the support anyone can give them. And it's the same kind of mindset that we bring. And I'll tell you, we talked a lot during this conversation about how Alexia and I work really well together. There are literally conversations we've had when we've tried to discuss little fine points about how to resolve something. And for 47 Furious Tales, the question comes up, what would Yoshio do? What would be the honorable course of action? And I think that served us in really good stead. And so check it out, enjoy it. We've got tiers at every budget point, so I hope folks will find something to their liking.
All right, I guess that leaves it up to me here to end this one off, the closer. I think collecting comics and supporting comics, if you love it, you should do it in any way that you possibly can. I don't agree that there's not a lot of good stories that are being told. I mean, like anything Donny Cates writes, I enjoy. I just read Thor 1 and 2. I've never bought a Thor comic in my life. And I mean, I give credit to Chris Helmsworth, first of all, for making Thor really cool in the MCU. And then Donny Cates writing an amazing story. I mean, Jeff Lemire, Cullen Bunn. I mean, it doesn't have to be a dying industry. I'm doing a Kickstarter as well, and we all have to support each other. If you don't know anything about Kickstarter, you type Kickstarter, Kick starter into the bar, right? And then there's a little search thing.
The Nino.
Yes. There's a little looking glass, and you type in 47 Furious Tales, and Tales is spelled Tails, right? You type that in, boom, it's going to pop it up. You go to their page, and you check out the different tiers that they have, and my friend on my last Kickstarter said, get in where you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And so find something that works for you. You don't have to be you don't have to buy the biggest package. Every little bit helps. And you're helping, these two awesome people right here that spent an hour talking to us about comic book. We really appreciate it. So please check out their Kickstarter on Wednesday, February 5th, and support these guys, because we want to see 12 issues happen before William dies.
Before Alexia murders me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
I tell you, if I put too many more horses in these stories, she just might pull the trigger on me.
Yeah, I might. Man. Thanks so much for having us, guys. Really
Thanks for having us, guys. It's been a blast.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Listeners, watchers, please like, share, and subscribe. The biggest part there is share get this out to as many people as we can so we can get this funded quickly.
Sharing is caring.
Exactly. And the quicker it gets funded, the less stress that you guys have to deal with, right?
Yeah, and we really do have this built just to fund. This basically pays for the artist, it pays for the printing, it pays for the postage and the Kickstarter fees. I basically don't worry about getting paid until it goes to market. So, you don't see me driving around in a Tesla with someone's Kickstarter money. That doesn't happen.
Actually, I want you to walk out to your driveway. I want to see what you're driving.
I drive a 2000 Saturn.
Okay.
I'm serious. I drive a 2000 Saturn.
No,
I've seen it.
I got a
paid
cheesy
$500 for it.
Sebring.
I couldn't actually sit down in one of those, so I have to drive a minivan. So I'm not. In other words, I'm not driving around with anybody's Kickstarter money either.
Yeah.
Your old minivan.
I got teenage boys. They're almost as big as I am, man. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, my oldest son's about to turn 25, so I feel you.
Old. See, Todd, we found
Wow.
somebody who's older than us.
Yes. Woo!
Yeah,
I feel good.
I'll be 50 this year, guys.
Dude, oh my God. What do you
Yay.
Yep,
That's
for real.
you look good for 50. I gotta give you credit, man.
Yeah, that's what all the guys tell me. If only the women would start telling me that.
Be careful what you wish for. Be careful.
Yep.
And notice Alexia didn't say anything.
No, I know. I'm painfully aware.
Listen.
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with you guys. All right, we'll wrap this one up before we get in any trouble. Peace out, everybody.
Be good or
Later
be
on.
good at it.